If you brought your Bibles, turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And last week, we started a three-part overview of the book of Corinthians, and as I shared, it is our farewell. It is three topics that are heavy in my heart and my spirit for DCC. Because you see, I feel that these three topics are critical to get right in light of where DCC is and where God is leading this church. And I appreciated the kind words of encouragement and those of you who said that you liked last week's message. And I want to encourage you, for those of you that have had people ask, please, you can go to the church website, listen to the podcast. You can, if you want to watch it, you can go to YouTube. Those videos are up there, and please feel free to share them and on your Facebook page as well, because that is an awesome way to get some free opportunities to tell your friends about Jesus. Think about that. Facebook is not just for off-color jokes and videos that you shouldn't laugh at, but you watch and laugh anyway. It can also be used for good, so I encourage you to do that. But if you missed last week, there is a brief video that we're going to show that puts that message in a nutshell. So, guys.
Well, hello, Satan.
Grab yourself. Oh, no, every time.
Wish I could say it was good to see you, but I can't.
Feelings mutual, so we're good.
Can you get rid of that cookie? You know we're fasting for
I'm sorry, you want to go halfsies on this?
No.
You're fasting?
No.
I had no idea.
You know what I'm going to say to you?
I know, get thee behind me or something like that.
I was curious, when it comes to the church, what's your strategy?
I'm growing to like the church, honestly. You know, they stay mad at each other half the time. They hate each other. They hate the rest of the world. So, I mean, I sit back and watch the fights like everybody else. You know what I'm talking about?
So you're pretty good at division in the church. How is it that you pull this off?
One of the easiest ways to make somebody just think that they're right, that they're completely and totally right. Another big thing, Bible versions. Everyone knows, myself included, King James is the only way to go. It's what I have in my personal library. I don't read it. I need to set the record straight on that. I don't read it. But you wouldn't see me reading one of those hippie versions of the Bible with all street language, hip-hop, Jesus stuff. You give me a scenario, I can tell you how I can make somebody fight about it.
How about politics?
Politics, easy. Christians are all Republicans, Craig. We've known that from day one.
How about music?
Music. The music's too loud. Do I have 5 people singing? Can we really play secular music in the church? Lord, I lift your name on high. Come on! This is kids play here.
How about alcohol?
Okay, no Christians drink, except that, Jesus turned water into wine, which I was there. Most people think it was red. It was white's in. It was, I didn't drink it, but I was there, saw it.
How about entertainment?
Entertainment? Did you see what I did to Disney? I'm the king! I rest my case, Craig. I can't let the church be united. You've heard the saying, a kingdom divided against itself can't stand, or
yeah, it's in the Bible.
It's what? It's in the Bible? Wow, that's embarrassing. Can we? I'm sorry.
Satan, have you ever been to a church board meeting?
Absolutely. I go every Tuesday. If you've never seen a deacon just straight up cuss in the middle of church at another deacon, it's a sight to behold.
So what does it do to you when believers do come together?
Well, I don't know if you've ever been kicked out of a club when the club's just going off and there's a great DJ and drinks are half price, but it's the same feeling, you know? As long as I can keep denominations talking about what makes them them and what they believe and what those other people believe. You know, they're not talking about the J guy.
Jesus.
Okay, so I'm gonna warn you once. If you say that again, I'm gonna leave. Because you know.
So when I say Jesus, you can't take it?
You know what? No, turn that camera off. That's it.
Hey, where are you going?
No, that's it.
Hey.
That's it.
Hey, Satan, you forgot your cookie.
Eat it, Craig.
It was a lighthearted reminder of what the enemy does to distract us, to discourage us as a church. And what it winds up doing is sapping the power from church. And as DCC heads into this time of transition, there's an important question that I think everybody at DCC needs to ask themselves. Everyone from elders to deacons to the newest person here, because you see, what will happen is, if this is not clear, you'll begin to get distracted. And just as the video gave us a lighthearted reminder, that's when the enemy likes to move in. And this is the question: what is ministry? What is ministry? I want you each to think about that for a moment and maybe come up with your own idea of what you think ministry is, because it's important that the church understand what ministry is. And we're going to see why in just a moment. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity to share your word, and I pray, God, that I would be a faithful messenger. Lord, that I would deliver the message that you have for your people today. That, God, I would rightly divide the word of truth. Because, God, your word is, its purpose is to correct, to instruct, to encourage. And, Father, I pray that we would use it for those things this morning. That, Lord, as we study diversity, that you would bring unity through that, just as you said in your message. God, have your way. I pray that, once again, these would be your words and not mine. And that, God, each of us would listen with our spirits to your spirit and not with our ears to any man. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. What is ministry and why does it matter? See, DCC is about to experience there's going to be some challenge. And anytime there is a challenge, anytime there is a time without a pastor, what happens is some people start to get some ideas of what's needed. And it happens in every church, okay? Don't think that, well, he's just picking on. No, this is true of anywhere. As they say, nature abhors a vacuum, okay? Something will fill in, something will come in to fill that emptiness up. And with no pastor, and coming upon a time when we have elder and deacon nominations, this is an opportunity that is very ripe for the enemy to step in. And that's what I want to do this morning, is just urge you to be cautious, to be on your guard. Because the enemy is a roaring lion. He's out there looking for whom he can devour. And what I want to do is I want to encourage you as a church that when the enemy comes here, he doesn't find any lost, sick, weak, or wounded. Instead, he finds a pack that he can't get through. He finds that there is unity, that there is prayer, that there is a team that he can't penetrate. Now, the thing is, when the enemy comes, he'll be sly at it. That's what he does. You look at what he did with Eve. He tempted her with just twisting the words of God just a little bit, and it worked. And what happens is we lose focus. When you're driving down the road in a car, you cannot just hold the wheel straight and you'll go straight. Okay, that's one of the toughest things to learn. You know, I remember as a child watching my dad drive, and I'm like, why is he always adjusting the wheel? What's wrong with him? He's driving straight. He should just hold it straight. We must have a cheap car. But once you get older, you begin to drive, you realize, oh, you can't just hold it straight. Otherwise, you do this into the ditch. And you're like, well, how? Why? Huh? And the same is true for church. So what is ministry? You see, if church leadership doesn't define what ministry is, everybody that is in the church or comes into the church will do so. And here's the danger. Okay, most of us have heard of the Salvation Army. All right? And I'm not putting the Salvation Army down. They do a wonderful work. They are an awesome social, what's the word I'm looking for? I apologize. A social cause organization. They are an organization that's focused on social causes. Those who are poor, those who are needy. Okay, that's awesome. It's needed. I support them. But are you aware that the Salvation Army originally started out as a church? University of Harvard. that bastion of learning. Started out as a Christian college. They're a little further left than most churches nowadays. What happens? How did they get adrift? It's because they lost sight of defining ministry. Because here's what happens, and everybody has an idea of what ministry should be. If you don't believe me, look at the book of Acts and how we got deacons. The elders were being inundated with things, and people come, and here's the thing, and we talked about this in our leadership meeting the other night, and I wanted to encourage them and give them warning. Just be on your guard. This can happen. You see, people come and they have these biblical ideas on what the church should do, and they couch it in biblical language, and you should do this, and God could really reach people if we only, or people need God and they can find him if we, and they find all these different things on what the church should do. And with the New Testament church, they kept going to the elders going, look, there's favoritism, this person's getting this, that other person isn't, and the widows and the orphans aren't being taken care of unless they're from this town, and that's not fair. And the elders appointed deacons because the elders, according to the New Testament, their job was to teach and to pray. And what happened is they were starting to get distracted from what ministry was. What was the purpose of ministry? What was the purpose of the church? What is the purpose of ministry here at DCC? And let me say that far too many people want to make their hobby into a church ministry. Okay? Say I like to play video games. I come to church, I'm like, look, you know what? There are tens of thousands of guys and girls that play video games, and they don't know Jesus. I play video games, and I do know Jesus. So I want the church to start a ministry, video game ministry. And the church can buy me a video game system and a big TV and a headset, and I'll go online, and I'll talk to them while I'm playing. And I'm going to tell them about Jesus while we're blowing each other up. I used a silly example. But the thing is so often we want to call the things that interest us our ministry. Just because one of us is involved with, has a burden for a legitimate ministry, not necessarily video game ministry, okay? Although if there's somebody out there with a video game ministry, God bless you. Because seriously, wow, they have a different language, gamers do. I don't even understand that. But what I want to do is remind us that a personal burden isn't necessarily what the church should be doing as ministry. Okay, and let's take a look in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul's writing here and says, yes, the body has many different parts, but not just one part. If the foot says, I am not a part of the body because I am not a hand, that does not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear says, I am not part of the body because I am not an eye, would that make it any less a part of the body? Paul's writing here and he's saying, because what happened is the Corinthians, and as we talked about last week, the Corinthians had begun to play favorites with teachers and with preachers. Well, we follow this guy, we follow that guy. This guy baptized me, that guy baptized me. We follow only Christ. The holier than thou crowd, they've been around forever. But they were starting to do the same thing with gifts or with ministries. They were starting to say this one was the most important, this one was above others. And that's what Paul is getting to here. And he's saying you can't do that. You're showing favoritism. And here's the thing. You see, there can be unity without uniformity. There can. A church is supposed to have diversity. It is. This particular passage of Scripture, many times preachers use it to talk about unity. And it does stress unity, but you're missing the point. You see, what Paul is talking about here is diversity. He's talking about diversity because he uses different parts of the body and talks about how they're all part of the body and they all serve the body. They'll work together. If you talk like me, your hands work a lot. But we all work together, and your body parts all work together for the good of the body, and we are to work together for the good of the church. Paul goes on, he said, if you only had an eye, how would you hear? Or if your whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. How strange a body would be if it had only one part. I always picture just a big nose. I don't know why, but there's just a big nose. Yes, there are many parts, but only one body. The eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. The head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. You see, all of us play only a part, and that includes the pastor. And that's very important for where you guys are headed into. You can't say, well, we're not a church because we don't have a pastor. Yes, you are a church. The pastor is but one part. The church, each and every one of you play a part. And God intends for us to rely on each other. Nobody is supposed to be self-sufficient. No ministry is supposed to be self-sufficient. Okay, it isn't. You know, I worked in the youth department. Okay, I did youth for a while here. You know what? The missions needed to be part of the youth. So we began to bring some of the missions committee in to talk to the young people about missions. We began to integrate because what happens is this. The youth then grow up with a burden for missions that some of the adults already have. And what happens is this. The adults, from talking with them, they were excited to see the young people excited about missions. They got a little more encouraged to do their job. And God has placed each and every one of you here at DCC for a purpose, and it is for his glory. It's to be used by him. It's not to be used for your glory or for our glory or for my glory. Because you see, it's not called a ministry, it's called a ministry. All right? It's called ministry, not ministry. And here's the difference. All right? With ministry, same person doing it forever, declining to step aside. This is mine. This is what I do. I don't think you heard me. This is what I do. You don't. You can help when I ask, not until then. And when you're done, you can go on your merry way. Ministry brings in others because the mission is always greater than the ministry. Okay, having done youth ministry, if I came into the leadership meetings and I was like, well, I'm wearing my children's ministry hat today, so we're going to talk about how everything needs to be about children's ministry in this leadership meeting. No, the job of leadership is not to show up at a meeting as a champion of one cause. And if what you're doing really is awesome and of God, why wouldn't you want other people to share in that? Why wouldn't you want other people to experience that same joy, that same pleasure, that same sense of wonderful fulfillment of doing what God wants done? Here's another symptom of ministry. The church exists for my ministry. The church is supposed to just support me. Ministry exists for the church. You see, the church does not exist to support any particular pet project. And if your ministry has become a ministry, that's exactly what it is. It's a pet project. Rather, the ministry exists for the building up of the body. Each and every ministry should contribute back to the body. It should bring something to the good of the body. Another symptom of ministry is no clear purpose or a fuzzy mission. Well, why are we doing this? Well, because we've always done it. Wait a minute. Unless you're talking about communion, or baptism, some churches foot washing, I don't know how you can get that. Well, that's what this is what our church does. You see, ministry has a clear, well-defined purpose. You know what you're doing. And you can define what the win is. It's not, well, you know, we're going to have people and there'll be people at the church for people. And that's what we're doing. Well, why are you doing it then? It has to have a clearly defined purpose. Each and every gift that Paul goes on to list in Corinthians has a specific purpose. It does, and Paul tells us what those purposes are. If we don't have a purpose, we need to re-examine it. And that goes to leads to the next one. It's not reaching anyone. If you're still doing it because, well, we've always done it and that's so-and-so's ministry, but nobody is being ministered to, is it really a ministry? If we still had somebody that made cassette tapes of the sermons, okay, and believe it or not, this has happened in churches where they still have a cassette ministry and nobody ever gets a cassette. For you younger people, it was before CDs. But they did, and they would not get rid of the cassette ministry because, well, that's what that person does. You see, ministry, ineffective ministries get replaced. And that's not an insult to the person. Because what happens is this, okay, I love music. I like to sing, I'm just not good at it. All right? I'm not. I'd prove it to you, but you'd be like, nah, just trust me, take my word for it. If I am determined that I want to sing, and I can't sing, it is leadership's job to say, you know what? We have to help this person find their gift, find their calling, because they're not doing it right. If I'm up here determined to sing and well, you know, it's my ministry. It's really not, okay? It's not. Let us help you find your ministry. And maybe my ministry is being a greeter because I'm like a super friendly person. Well, are we really doing that person any favors by not allowing them to be where God intended them to be? No, we're doing them a disservice by allowing them to continue to be frustrated and frustrate others. But ineffective ministries can't get replaced. Well, I make the cassette tapes. Well, how would you like to learn how to burn CDs? What's CDs? Come here, let me show you. Now we have a CD ministry. And most people don't use that. Well, that's what I do. Well, how would you like how to learn how to upload them for a podcast? What's a podcast? Why don't you come here, let me show you. Another symptom of ministry is unwilling to allow others to teach or to preach. And this goes to pastors as well, okay? I've heard pastors, I've got too much I want to say to my people. I can't give up my pulpit. Whoa. That should be like the old needle on the record. Records, kids, were before cassettes. All right, and I do miss it because those of you who know what a needle across a record sounds like, it is a great sound effect for when something has gone sideways fast, isn't it? Because literally, that was it, the needle going across the record sideways. But I can't let somebody else preach or teach. I got too much I want to say. That's my pulpit. I'm sorry. You have things you want to say? As a pastor, I have no business getting up here unless I've heard from God. And you will not benefit from much of anything that I have to say if I haven't. It's not my pulpit. You're not my people. I don't say that because I'm leaving. Every pastor is an interim pastor. You are God's people. And you need fed from God's word, not from my word. So that unwillingness to allow others to teach or preach, that's a ministry. Because what happens is this, in a ministry, next-gen leaders get a chance to grow and gain experience. We wonder why there's no one to pass the torch to, and sometimes it's because we refuse to pass it. They quit waiting, and they went somewhere else. How sad that there are churches that they have had good young leaders go and leave and find another church because the church they were in, people refuse to let them serve. We need to encourage and to mentor them and give them a chance to run and to do it in a place where it's safe to fail. It's safe to make a mistake because there are people that love you, that will stick up for you, that will help you. Another symptom of ministry, refusal to come under authority. Okay, get this. Accountability, coming under authority, is biblical. It is biblical. Anytime there's no authority, anytime there's no accountability, you are out of biblical grounds. You're outside of biblical guidelines there. Jesus himself said, I have come to do the will of my Father. Okay? There is no pastor, there is no board, there is no ministry that should not come under the authority of the church. Next one, it excludes new people. Well, so-and-so wants to help. Yeah, I know, but they come to the church, like 6 years ago? Seriously? They don't know how we do it. Wait, what? How are they supposed to learn? Ministry desires other people to get plugged in, to have a part in what we're doing, to be a part of the team. The next one of a ministry does not integrate with other church ministries. They become silos. As I said earlier, they all need to work together to build the body. They all work together to build the body. You see, the youth should be involved in missions. Oh, I can't get an amen for that. I said the youth should be involved with missions. Amen. Thank you. Children should be involved in ministry. And you look for ways to do that. You have to be intentional. You have to make it happen because it doesn't happen on its own. Going on, verse 22, Paul says, in fact, some parts of the body that seem weakest and least important are actually the most necessary. I just mentioned children's ministry. It's so easy to write them off. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't write youth group off. Don't write the younger generation off because they're not quite ready yet, because they're not there yet. In verse 25, this makes for harmony among the members so that all the members care for each other. If one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are honored. Too often, we differ from each other, or when we differ from each other, we differ with each other. What I mean by that is this. Just because somebody has a burden for a different ministry does not mean that their ministry is less valid than yours or mine. They're all the same. And just because somebody has a different approach doesn't make them bad. How do you know God didn't bring them in? Because he wanted your ministry to get refreshed so it could be revived. He wanted the ministry that you're a part of to experience a renewal. And the way that God is going to do that is injecting some new life in. But if we refuse to accept people, we want to differ with them because we differ from them, that's not God. Here's the other thing. Ministry is satisfying needs, not satisfying wants. Okay? Well, I want to do this. I want to sing, so you should let me be on the praise team. Trust me, praise team, you don't want me. We turn down people's microphones. Oh, I know, I'm stepping on some toes here. I'm getting in dangerous water. We turn down a microphone rather than have a hard conversation. I'm convinced of this, and I've said this to several different people for a while now. And it's not just true of DCC. Most churches that are struggling, they're probably 5 hard conversations away from turning it around. 5 hard conversations. How sad that we would rather turn down a microphone and continue to live a lie and to lie to others and allow them to live a lie than just say, you know what? This isn't your ministry. This isn't where God has gifted you. Let us find where that is. There should be no job beneath any of us. There really shouldn't. There is nothing that in this church that needs done that's beneath any one of us. As I've been looking for church, one of the things I had to do was write out my call to ministry. And one of the churches I was applying at wanted that. And I sat down, I'm like, oh, wow. How do I do this? And I began to really seriously think, because I'd put it down on paper and submit it to somebody else who could read it and understand it. What was my call to ministry? And here's what I realized. And I'm not comparing myself to Samuel or to any of the Old Testament prophets that answered with this, but here's how I got my start in ministry. I told God, if I get asked to do something, I'll say yes. It was it. It was it. There was no fancy camp experience, no evangelist praying over me, and all of a sudden, the lightning bolt moment, God is calling you to ministry, son. And I felt like I was not quite as qualified when I got to Bible college because I didn't have that. So why are you here? I said yes to God. I felt this is what God wanted me to do. And it started just, I was playing drums. We're going to a church. It's our second week there. And my mother says to the pastor as we're walking out the door, she said, Pastor Hart, why are those drums on the stage? I haven't seen anybody play them. It was our second week. Like, that couldn't have happened. And Pastor Hart says, well, Pastor Hart, God bless him. Well, Mrs. Dotson, we got the drums and we're waiting for the drummer. I believe God will provide. My mother said, Jimmy plays drums. And I looked at my mom, and my brain thought, fortunately it didn't come out of my mouth, but my brain thought, Jimmy's been playing drums for 7 months. Well, Jimmy, I'm going to call you James. Well, James, practice is Thursday at 7. I'll see you there. It started. It's fulfilling a need. It's fulfilling a need. That's all ministry is. Meeting a need. It's not anything fancy. How I got started here, we were coming to church, and I wanted to do something, but I was working retail in Fort Wayne, Indiana. For those of you who know, that's not like right around the corner. And my hours were such I couldn't get in, so what did we do? We're like, is there anything we can do? Well, we need somebody to clean the pews. So Laura and I came in and we cleaned the pews at night, sometime between Sundays, whenever we had time. And that's how people began to know who I was, who we were. Oh, they're the couple that's cleaning the pews. They're cleaning the pews. There's no job beneath any of us. Verse 27, Paul says, all of you together are Christ's body, and each of you is a part of it. And then in verse 31, he concludes with this, so you should earnestly desire the most helpful gifts. But now let me show you a way of life that is best of all. See, God intends every Christian to serve. Every single one of us is intended to be doing something. All right, we're all part of the body. Now, I know some of you are thinking of somebody who's like, yeah, well, in that case, so-and-so are the tonsils, and they don't do any good, so let's cut them out. Okay? No, none of us are the tonsils. Each and every one of us is supposed to be doing something to serve. We must give up things we love for things we love more because we're spiritual contributors, not spiritual consumers. We must give up things we love for things we love more because we're spiritual contributors, not spiritual consumers. If you only have a limited amount of time, and I know all of you do, why not invest it in something that makes an eternal difference? Why not invest in something that has eternal consequences? Yeah, it's awesome. You volunteer and you sell hot dogs at the football game. Okay? Maybe you take the tickets at the football game or whatever it might be, or whatever it is. But imagine if you took those hours in the week and you said, hey, you know what? I don't have a whole lot of time, but I have 3 hours a week that I can contribute to the church. What can I do? Because whatever it is that you do, even if it's cleaning up the pews, you are contributing to eternal investments. You're investing in eternity. You're not investing in the local community, and that's good. But if you have to choose the greater good. Here's the other thing. The most helpful gifts are often the least glamorous. The most helpful gifts are often the least glamorous, okay? And I'm going to go to a painful memory here. Please bear with me. The Ohio State-Virginia Tech game. I know. Ow. All the talk was about the quarterback. All the talk was about the new quarterback. How would he do? What would he do? Could he play against higher level of competition? It's the glory position. But you know what? It wouldn't have mattered who was the quarterback because the offensive line didn't block. I told one person instead of the little Buckeye leaf that they get, the decals on their helmet, they should have put turnstile stickers on there because they were just like, whoop, there you go. There you go. Pleased to meet you. Number 83, 84. If that offensive line doesn't block, the quarterback doesn't do any good. The most helpful gifts are not the most glamorous ones. Because you see, if I'm up here, and if you're watching this online, it had nothing to do with me. It was somebody else who worked the camera and worked the soundboard. Kids' church. The reason why kids' church works is because every week Sue Brown takes time to get everything together for the teachers and to clean up from last week. That's her ministry. If you have children, please find her and thank her. Because if your kid ever came out of kids' church talking about something, buzzing about something, or remembered something, or enjoyed something, thank you, Sue. We need more people that serve behind the scenes. So what do? We must take on the yoke of servanthood and lay down our rights. Well, I've been going to church forever. I have a right to just sit here. None of us have a right to just sit here. Salvation wasn't free. Jesus paid a heavy price for it. It was a gift. But we're supposed to do something with that gift. Be willing to do what is needed, not always what we want. Oh, yuck. Yuck. Encourage and include new people to help. No pastor, no church elder should ever hear that somebody tried to volunteer for a ministry and they were not allowed in. At least tried to find a fit for them. Now, maybe if it was me trying to sing on the praise team, it might be like, no, seriously, Well, then let's find something else for them. But don't shut them out, because that's just wrong. Be willing to step aside if needed. So often, well, I can't step aside because there's nobody here to do it. Maybe there's nobody here to do it because you won't step aside. There's two sides to every coin. So often, ministries and churches, they're lacking because they refuse to allow others to help. Next one, don't identify with your ministry, identify with God. If you're thinking, you can't take my ministry, that's who I am. No, you're not. You're a child of God. You need nothing else. If you need something more than a child of God, I don't think you got the child of God part right. You're not who you are. You're what Jesus did. Okay? And that doesn't change. Here's the other thing. Service is not extra credit. It's not, well, I come to church and sometimes I put $5 in the plate. That's not enough. Service isn't extra credit, okay? And as we come into this time for the church with DCC, here's the thing. It is all hands on deck. It is, because guess what? People are still going to need visited in the hospital. People are still going to need someone to go and take them communion. People are still going to need someone to go and pray with them before they have surgery. There's something that's said here, once an elder, always an elder at DCC. Now is the time, gentlemen. Now is the time. Make yourself available to those other 3 guys. Here's that news for you. 3 guys, no matter how good they are, there's no way just 3 guys can do it. Just tell them, look, I'll come to the meetings. I'll contribute what I have. I don't need a vote. But I want to support you. I want to help you. If I can serve as a sounding board, I will. If I can share with you some experience and I've learned, I will. That's a great way to prop up your elders. That's a great way to help them be more effective. Everyone can and should be doing something. And you're like, well, I've never served as an elder. That's okay. Alicia sent out an email this past week, to the elders, to Brad, a couple others who head up ministries, because there's a bunch of holes in the schedule. There doesn't need to be holes. You don't have to be a church of 10,000 to have enough volunteers. You just need a few more servants. Not those who are already serving do a few more things. That's not what I'm saying. Because I'm warning you, church body, if you're not involved, here's what you're doing. Here's the crisis we're approaching. Those few that are involved, they're overburdened. They are. They won't tell you that because they're too nice. They're too humble. They're too polite. Not that I try not to be those things. But they need your help. Don't be a consumer, be a contributor. Contribute something. If you benefit from a ministry, help that ministry. We have some of the youth group that volunteer and serve in kids' church and in the nursery. They don't have children there. How awesome that they're leading by example. They don't. They have no stake in that whatsoever, other than that they said, well, you need help? What can I do? I can't teach. It's okay. There are other jobs. And they go back there and they do that. And they're a blessing to anybody that has children here, because your children are in there and they're learning about Jesus in an environment that's safe for them and that's relevant to their lives. But we need more people to help. We do. Here's the thing, there's no shame in saying that. There really isn't. Because it's the truth. And if we can't be honest, well, there's shame in that. So what is ministry? Ministry is this. As John the Baptist put it, I must decrease, he must increase. Less of us and more of Jesus. And sometimes being Jesus is cleaning pews. Sometimes it's changing diapers. Sometimes it's helping in the sound booth. Sometimes it's just smiling and saying hello to people when they walk through the door. Being Jesus isn't always the guy behind the pulpit. There are far more important things that happen on a Sunday morning than just the sermon. We need you to make those things happen. If you'd stand, we're going to pray. I'm going to ask the praise team to come up, and we're going to close. Each and every one of us have a gift. Each and every one of us have a ministry, an opportunity to serve. Not ourselves, but others. Because that's the other thing ministry is. It's service. Service. Some other ways you can describe ministry: awkward, inconvenient. It's those things sometimes too. But it's also a blessing. It is joy. It is being Jesus to people that need to find him. Father, I pray that you would help each and every one of us, God, to be your hands and feet. To quit worrying about what we want and ask what you want from us. Lord, you're not going to ask any of us to stand on the roof and preach a sermon, but you may ask us to hold a door open and say hello. We can all do that. I pray that you would help each and every one of us to have servants' hearts, modeled after the greatest servant of all, your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Seated above